Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Even as we speak, the Ontario government is introducing legislation essentially to halt any strike by support workers in education. What do you think? Is this the right thing to do? Introducing legislation to block threatened strike this Friday of education support workers. Negotiations, as you probably know, between the government and CUPE broke off last week, with the union threatening to strike this Friday. About 55,000 support workers. Whether schools would have to close, whether classes would be disrupted is unclear, but in all probability, there would certainly be some disruption. Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce says he is imposing a contract on the workers that will not allow them to legally walk off the job. He's doing it right now in the House. The government has been offering the workers raises of 2% this year for workers making less than $40,000 a year and 1.25% for all others. Lecce says this new deal, in addition, will give 2.5% annual raises to workers making less than $43,000 a year and 1.5% for others. So this year, he's offering 2% for those making under 40, 125 for all others, and next year, annual salaries would be 2.5% for anybody making less than 43,000. And by the way, the average support worker, with pensions factored in, is about $49,000 a year. That's salary plus benefits, pension benefits, okay? 49,000. That's the average. The starting salary for people just starting out as a support worker is just under $40,000. But most experienced support workers are making about $51,000 a year, plus pension benefits. So teachers, by the way, this is not teachers, but just to give you some comparison, a starting salary for Ontario teachers today is $51,263. After 15 years as a teacher, the salary is $94,612. The average teacher's salary in Ontario is $75,000 plus pension benefits. But as I say, if you are a support worker, which is what we're dealing with today, your starting salary when you first start out, your first day, is $39,000 something plus pension benefits. After 15 years, the average pay is about $49,000, including pension benefits, okay? So what do you think? Is that, I mean, there's no question, and the union is, by the way, demanding an increase of $3.25 an hour. Lecce says there's no possible way we can afford that. The union claims, and the union is absolutely right, that listen, a 2% or 2.5% increase does not match inflation. We should at least get inflation. What's your feeling on that? But what Lecce is saying is, look, we're in tough times in this province. We're in tough times. Everybody is having a tough time. We cannot afford to give you more than 2%. Next year, 2.5%. If you're making under 43,000 next year or under 40 this year. It's a little confusing, but essentially what they're saying is, look, if you're making under $40,000, we'll give you a 2% increase this year. And next year, if you're making under 43,000, we'll give you 2.5%. That's essentially what they're saying. Lecce says, look, times are tough. There's no question. A lot of people aren't getting any increases whatsoever, let alone cost of living. But even more importantly, he says, look, our students, our young people, have had their education disrupted for the past 2.5 years. This government, our government, will not allow that to happen this year. No matter what, we are going to insist that our students in Ontario schools have stability. They should have the knowledge that they are going to be able to stay in class. There will be in-class learning all this year with no disruptions, no interruptions. No matter what unions are threatening to strike or threatening to walk out, we will not allow it. We will keep, this year at least, we will keep students, come hell or high water, we will keep them in the classroom. On the other side, as I point out, the increase in pay does not cover inflation. Inflation is now running around 7.5%. The increase in salary they're offering is around 2% this year. So, what's your feeling, folks? Legislation, they began to introduce legislation at 1 o'clock this afternoon at Queen's Park. I'm not sure if it's passed as yet, but very clearly it will be passed shortly. The Conservatives, as you know, have a pretty healthy majority, so they will pass this legislation. Is this the right thing? Is it fair? Or do you think that all workers deserve an increase of at least the rate of inflation? What's your feeling here, folks? Let me just go through this again. Most experienced education support workers are making somewhere between $50,000 and $51,000. The starting salary, however, is a little under $40,000. But the average salary, I know it's a little, but the most experienced workers after 15 years as a support worker are making $51,000 plus benefits, pension benefits in particular. The average pay with pension benefits for a support worker today is $49,000. That's with pension benefits. So, what do you think, folks? The union's demanding 3.25 per hour increase. Lecce, the Ontario government, is now offering 2% this year, 2.5% next year for people essentially making under 43,000. So, what's your feeling? Is this fair? And you may have some comments about teachers' salaries. I know that it's not what we're talking about today, but there's no question that the support workers are comparing their salaries with what teachers are making. A teacher today starts, I mean, right out of normal school or whatever teacher's education starts at $51,263 plus benefits. After 15 years, a teacher in Ontario, after 15 years teaching, the not the average, but after 15 years, the salary is $94,612. The average salary for a teacher in Ontario today, $75,000. I don't know. And so you can see why the support workers say, "Hey, you know what? We may not be worth 75, but we're worth more." What's your feeling here, folks? John, what sort of response are we getting here? People agree or not?
Yeah, well, we'll get to those responses in just a moment. We invite your calls first and foremost. 613-413-2217 is the number. We're on Facebook, The Lowell Green Milkman Show, and Blast the Radio, also on YouTube. If you just go to lowellgreen.com, all of your show links, all of your ways to contact us are there. All right, we begin with Erlene, who says, I am sick of their strike threats. Mike says, this is worse than the post office used to be in the late 70s and 80s. Strikes, lockdowns, then COVID. Now talk of a strike again. Sick of this stuff, says Peter. Mind you, they need the pay increase to cover all the increases it costs under the racist Justin Trudeau.
Well, okay. Yeah, but what's the answer? Is the government offer fair? That's my question today. They're passing legislation, may already be passed at Queen's Park, banning the strike. Teacher support workers are asking 3.25 an hour. The government is offering 2% this year, 2.5% next year. What's your feeling? Is the government offer fair, or do the workers deserve at least the cost of living? What's your feeling, folks?
All right, so let's get direct answers to that question, folks.
Please.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to that. My personal feeling is, I mean, you know what the salary is going in. You choose the career, and then you complain about the salary.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Now, mind you, I mean, in fairness, we have inflation today at a 40-year high,
sure.
and people got to deal with that. But on the other side of the coin, there's two factors here. Everybody who's not a government worker is having a tough time. Very few people are getting any raises of any kind. Um, Secondly, is the issue of students. No matter what, one thing I agree with: the students should not have this year disrupted by a strike or anything else. You may agree or disagree.
No, I
So,
applaud that. I applaud that big time, and that shows some leadership. And when you were saying that, I was quietly applauding in my head.
yeah. By the way, I don't want you to confuse what we're talking about. Are support workers. This is custodians, lunch monitors, etc. Essentially, they don't work for 2 months during the summer. By the way, and they have very good pension benefits. But some people confuse these with education assistants. Those are the people who are trained to work with early education, for example, work with autistic kids, problem kids. They're very highly trained. But
Okay,
they're
I'm glad you said that because I was thinking these were the teacher assistants,
no,
etc. No, no, no.
no.
Okay,
The
so
but, just let me the average salary for an education assistant is 57,727 today. So their pay is pretty reasonable, I would think. But the average if the teacher makes the average on seven is 75. The average for an education assistant is 57.7. The average for a support worker with pension benefits is 49. If you discount the pension benefits, it's about 45. Go ahead, John.
James points out that the custodians do work in the summer. Certainly they do. I've seen them around. And of course, if the school is open for summer school, then somebody's got to be there to do all of the custodian work. The government offer is fair, 100%, says James. Woodenhead on YouTube says this is also the dog chasing their own tail. If everyone gets an increase, don't you think it will trickle down and make your raises moot? Todd says you have to remember these low income workers have received nothing in pay raises over the past 9 years, but look back at the Sunshine List and see how much they received. This is not teachers.
Well, that's to say that they haven't received a pay raise in 9 years is not true. Um, what happened? I just there was the liberal government. Here we go. A decade ago, the then liberal government passed legislation known as Bill 115, which froze some education workers' wages and limited their ability to strike. But the unions won a court challenge years later, with the judge ruling that the government substantially interfered with meaningful collective bargaining, and Ontario was left having to pay more than $100 million in remedies to the unions. To say that the support workers had their wages frozen is not true. A judge ordered that they receive in total over $100 million. Just want to get the record straight, folks. Go ahead, please.
All right, let's go to email. The address is lowell@blasttheradio.com. Robert in Carlton Place, you are first up. He says, I think we have already lost this battle in court, and it has cost Ontario over $50 million. I would rather Ford pass legislation to bring in charter schools. We will never have peace in the school system.
No, we haven't lost. The court ruled that a wage freeze was interfering with negotiation rights, but they have not ruled. I mean, in this case, it's not a wage freeze. In fact, the Conservatives have lifted the freeze and saying, no, we will give you 2% this year, 2.5% next year. So this is a different situation. I just want to get the record straighter. There's so much misinformation out there. Go ahead, please.
To the question of, is the government legislation the right thing to do? According to Jamie by email, yes, I feel it's the right thing to do. I'm tired of teachers striking. We all want more money. I'm a healthcare worker and have not had a raise in years. We can't all strike. Enough. My best friend is a special needs teacher in the Catholic board, and she does not want to strike and just wants to teach the kids. The kids have already gone through enough.
Well, as a special needs, she's probably making 57,000, 58,000 plus pension benefits. The teaching profession, by the way, you might be interested to know that the average salary for an Ontario teacher is among the highest. They are among the highest paid teachers in the Western world. The average salary in Canada is for teachers is much higher than in the United States. The average salary here for a teacher is 75,000. In the United States, the average salary is about 40 to 45,000. It's U.S. funds, I understand, but
Sure.
still, our teachers in Ontario are among the best paid in the world. Go ahead.
And the average salary for a full-time worker in Canada, by the way, is $20,000 less than that, $54,630 per year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, teachers are doing all right. No strike, please. Some don't want to strike, says Lori. James says a bunch of greedy clowns. DL says if we can't afford it, then Mr. Lecce shouldn't have taken his fat pay increase. His logic is bogus. I rarely side with unions, but if you visited a school recently, it's a war zone. These people deserve what they are asking for.
So you don't mind then if they walk out and our students have another year disrupted? That's the other issue here. I would like to see them getting more money. There's no question, but I don't want to see students disrupted again. So, at some point, it's got to make a decision. What's more important here, the workers or the students? In my opinion, the students are more important. If we have to make a decision, I come down on the side of the students. You may disagree, but to me, the students' education is more important than the salaries of the workers. Go ahead, please, John.
Lowell, could you please help me with the pronunciation? Is it Leachy? Is that how I say his name?
Lecce, yeah.
Lecce? Okay, I knew I screwed that up. Thank you, sir. Joshua says, support workers are overlooked and crucial. They should be an essential service. Teachers and many students, such as myself when I was in school, could not function without them. They deserve a living wage. I just wish the unions had bargaining power to get it without a strike. Over to text, 613-413-2217. Peter says, it is more than fair, but it's all about the children. Bull, he says. Okay. This is a very tricky situation, chimes in Anne on Facebook. If the Premier gave in to their demands, teachers would demand the same thing, and teachers in Ontario are the highest paid in the world. Yes, the world. We all know it. Don't forget either that teachers get 3 months off a year atop all their other high salary and benefits. So I think it's fair. Anything else is screwing taxpayers. Teachers have a Me Too clause. Never forget that. We're not talking teachers. We're talking support staff. Just to be clear.
The problem is, of course, that everybody compares their salary with others. So if you're in the education field, it's only natural that you're comparing your salary with the salary of, let's say, a teacher. That's just natural. And it's quite right. When the teacher's salary goes up, well, you can be sure that the support workers, et cetera, they demand an increase as well. One of the games that used to be played, they don't do this anymore, because there's now province-wide negotiation. The reason for that is that the unions would go after what they considered to be one of the weakest school boards, because in those days it used to be the school board, each individual school board had different salaries. Okay, so the union would target a school board that they considered to be really weak. Maybe it was in Sudbury, North Bay, or whatever, and they would go after them. And they would go out and pound and pound and pound away and strike and all the rest of it, so that they would get on a high income. And then, of course, all the other school boards in the province said, well, listen, in Sudbury, they got 10%, so we demand 10%. And that's what happened for years. It was wild. It was just a leapfrog, and the unions were finally, the government, I forget which one it was, the government said, no, it's going to be province-wide negotiations. No more of this comparing, your school board salary with others. I just throw that out as a little bit of history here. Go ahead.
Kind of in the same vein, Christy had a question earlier. Is this just the public school board, or is this the Catholic board as well?
No, this is all the support workers for both boards.
Okay.
It's done province-wide now. Not as I repeat, individual school boards are not negotiating now. Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you for the clarity on that. Kellyanne says there was a war zone because of the disruption caused during the past 2 years. I agree. The government should step in and no to a strike. 65,000 teachers on the Sunshine List last year, up from 35,000 the previous year, says Coraline. I think most of us agree with you, Lowell Green, says Mike. Yes, says Valda, give them a raise. 613-413-2217.
But please pay attention. They're offering 2% this year for those making under 40,000. Next year, the offer is 2.5% for those making under 43. So it's not a freeze. They're giving them, but the question is it enough? And the other thing is if it's not enough, do you support a strike then? So once again, our students are disrupted? That's the question. At some point, and I keep saying this, a decision's got to be made. It may be a tough decision. I'd like to give you more, but I can't, and I have to. If it comes right down to it, I got to support the students. The students' right to an education, I believe, is paramount to a person's right to an income. I honestly do. Go ahead.
And to give you a raise, I have to take it from the taxpayer, who right now is
struggling
between a rock and a hard place. Yep. We're 21 minutes in, sir. Let's get a word in here for Shields.
Shields, yes. Still getting good reviews from Shields. Thank goodness. It's nice to hear from people who have taken my advice. They've tried Shields, and they've been very, very pleased. I've had no complaints whatsoever. And as I've said before, hey, if I'm talking about a company or whatever it is, and people get bad service, don't think I don't hear about it. Shields, all I'm getting is good reviews, glowing reviews. I think one of the most common compliments I get is how quickly they are able to deliver the product. And I've said this many times, it's an in-stock dealership. About 90% of anything you could want in appliances, all the major brands, some of the minor brands as well, different prices, colors, etc., all available in stock, which means that in all probability, they can have it in your home within a few days. Shields.ca. Go ahead, John.
All right. Facebook.com/The Lowell Green. Facebook.com/Milkman Show. All right. The Ontario government passing legislation to stop a school worker strike. Is the government's offer fair? Yes or no? That is the question on the table.
Thank you.
No strikes is Coraline. James says no strike. Richard asks, what happens if legislation is passed and they still go on strike? I believe it would be against the law, but are there repercussions?
Yes, it would be. It would be a walkout or a strike would be illegal. And the union would be subjected to very heavy fines, believe me.
Joseph is watching on YouTube. He says minimum wage in Ontario is now $15 per hour or $31,200. Raising minimum wage to that level is still having a ripple effect through our economy. And he corrects himself. He says $31,200 per year. Mike says, yes, I think the government's office is fair. Students been through enough already with previous strikes plus the pandemic. Please do not disrupt their year once again. Let's go back to email Lowell@blasttheradio.com. Lisa says, what people have to realize is that there isn't a middle class anymore. All there is haves and have-nots. Okay, let's get back to Richard says, thanks for answering.
Let's get back to addressing the issue here, folks. Okay. Okay.
We're
I
trying.
have a question out there. Let's I know sometimes it's very hard to, people say, well, I'm uncomfortable with that question. Yeah, but it's a question that's got to be answered. Go ahead.
And it's a yes/no question, really.
Yeah.
Eric says, no more rotational strikes holding the students hostage. Only allow negotiations every 3 years to allow some raises and cost of living increases. Hold negotiations only during summer months when children and students are not.
Yeah, I know,
held
but
hostage.
it still doesn't answer my question.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, the government today, even as we speak, it may have already been passed, is passing legislation banning a strike this Friday. The government offer is 2% for those making under 40. Next year, 2.5% for those making under 43. Is this fair? That's really the question here. Is the government doing the right thing? You may wish that they could give more money, but that's the deal, okay? And if the union says no, it's not good enough, they want 3.25 more an hour, then they're going to go on strike. So, what is the government doing the right thing here? Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, we have a direct answer to your question. Carrie says yes. It is fair. Thank you, Carrie. All right.
Don't forget the one other thing to keep in mind. It's not the government's money. It's your money.
Right.
It's your money.
It's one thing. It's one thing if it's the private sector.
Yeah,
this is not the private sector.
That's right.
You and I are footing the bill for this, and you and I are already, pardon me, taxed to death. Richard says, no strike. Think of the freaking kids and just keep on freaking negotiating the parallel with classes going on. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, Richard. No, I think at 2% 1 year and 2% next year or 2.5% next year is fine. No strike for me, says Bruce. We're getting the answers to your question now, Lowell. Here we go. Glenn says, legislate them as essential with no striking. The deal on the table is fair. Woodenhead on YouTube. Yes, work to rule until they sort it out. They do deserve a raise as long as the Me Too motions are quashed.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Come on, folks. Come on. You can do a little bit better than that. Go ahead.
Eric says, sorry, Lowell. Nope. Cannot include legislation simply to avert this strike.
Okay, I disagree, but at least you're being definitive. Go ahead.
It's a yes, no question, right? So there you go. There is no wrong answer. Ann says, yes, it is fair. It is all they can do. Let's face it. Let's go to some of the earlier comments. Chrissy says,
let's keep something else in mind. The government has a responsibility, not just to the unions and not just to the students. The government has a responsibility to the taxpayers, to all residents. We in charge them with the responsibility of deciding how much money they can spend and where it can be spent. That's what we elected them for. So the government has said, listen, we've examined everything. All we can afford right now is 2%. Next year, we can afford 2.5%. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, we're not going to let you strike. But that's all we can afford. And you may disagree, but I mean, at some point, you got to make a decision. How much can you afford? You never not buy something because you couldn't afford it? Holy smokes. Go ahead.
I mean, is that what the legislation basically comes down to? No, you can't strike, and here's our offer, take it or leave it? No room for negotiation once they pass that legislation?
Well, they've negotiated for weeks.
Okay.
That's the question.
Not to mention that parents have also had to take time off, too, during this whole pandemic due to the child care. I work in long-term care, and I'm sure that my coworkers will have a tough time finding child care. I agree to the raise as the cost of living has gone up. It is a fair deal, says Kellyanne. Chrissy says, I think all workers deserve an increase. Definitely the cost of living, etc. People need a break. But then again, the more money you make, the more they take in taxes. Heather says, every working person deserves to be making what is equal to inflation or maybe a 2% more to cover taxes. James, the government offer is 100% fair, he says. Todd, this is custodial and maintenance 12 months a year. Give them at least the cost of living. If no strike, how do they negotiate? Remember, they had no proper raise over 9 years.
Todd, that's fine. Okay, let me ask you this. Are you prepared to pay more taxes to pay a higher income? Are you prepared, you personally, to pay higher taxes in order to give the workers more money? Because the money's got to come from someplace, and you're the only place. So it's all very well. You say, well, they deserve a cost of living. Okay, fine. Where's the money to come from? Are you, Todd, prepared to pay higher taxes? If you are, please let us know. Go ahead.
Let's go to the email. Nope, email disappeared. Okay, let's go to Mike on Facebook. My dad did work there during that time, and they were always on strike. Back then, we were much more reliant. Alan, what is the educational requirement for your support worker? I'm just trying to figure out why they would be comparing themselves to a teacher. I'm fully against any teacher strike happening.
Well, my understanding is that there are very few qualifications as a support worker. I'm not even sure if you require high school education. Some of you may be able to respond to that. My understanding is you don't even require a high school diploma. Go ahead, please.
And it would depend on what you're doing, too. Obviously, a custodian would have to have some sort of understanding of mechanical systems, etc. Cafeteria worker may have to have some rudimentary or at least, basic understanding of food prep.
Well, probably no more than a
McDonald's worker, etc.
Yeah, I was going to say 15-year-old kid serving up hamburgers.
Fair enough. As it came out of my mouth, my brain was going, John. Todd says, yes, give them at least the cost of living as an increase. Mike says, yes.
Okay, Todd. Okay. But once again, okay, you're prepared to pay more taxes then in order to give them? Because the money's got to come from someplace. If not from you, Todd, where? Where is the money to come from? That's the problem. Go ahead.
Or what are you prepared to give up that we also receive from the provincial level of government in order to move that money over there?
What service are you prepared to give up? Right.
See, and that's the problem, isn't it? Right? The Liberals give and give and give and give and create all these things. And the minute the Conservatives are in, they're the ones who are taking it all away. And we have this sense of entitlement. It's a vicious cycle. Glenn says, how about a special tax for everyone who supports the raise? Todd says, it doesn't matter if they don't give it to the low income. They give it to the sunshine list. And yes, as a taxpayer, I will pay. All right. Todd's willing to pay.
Good for you.
Eric suggests we take the money out of the bike lanes. There we go.
Go ahead. Good response.
Those are all the comments we've got on this, Lowell.
That's great. Thank you, well, folks. Thank you. Back again tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green Podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green Podcast. This is a production of BlastTheRadio.com.